How's that now? Yeah, that sounds better. Yeah. Well, that probably helps if I hit unmute. That's why we have people around. See, I haven't done this in like 3 months. I'm out of practice here. How about now? Audio? Sorry about that. How's that now? Yeah, that sounds better. Hey, that's my voice again. We don't like that, but that's why I keep headphones on, so I don't have to listen to myself. So what I was saying, polarizer is a very useful thing, especially on a car that's reflecting up to the clouds, because then we can control that angle of incidence so that it shows the body, not the reflection. We can stack those rotations in a way that you can blend that all together. So let me show you what I did. We'll just kind of jump ahead just a little bit. So all I really did, I did an 8x10 crop instead of a 3x2, right? So digital cameras generally shoot 3x2, so I changed this a little old school, right? 8x10, and so that gives us. I'll flip back and forth so you can see. I'll make that bigger. Shift F for full screen. There we go. And so what we did, just an easy crop in is kind of that first step, right? In any photo editing software, the crop tool is the most powerful tool you can use. So that's always kind of my first guess is, can I crop this to make the photo better? And I think we get rid of some distracting elements here in the back by just cropping in. And then the other thing I did, I killed my shadows. I know this is a black car, so I want to make it more black. So I'm going to take those shadows and bring them down. And I'm going to take those highlights of the clouds and bring them down as well. And so that's just going to make it a little bit more contrasty. We added clarity. We added dehaze to kind of just make it a little bit more punchy with cars. Cars, unlike people, I don't mind like going crazy with the clarity slider. With skin, you don't want to do that because then people look like 90s Thrasher magazine. We don't want that. But for cars, you can kind of get away with it a little bit more. It shows off more of that texture and all that. I didn't really play with exposure. I think that was fine. Just really, it was clarity to haze, but killing those shadows is a good way to make a dark car darker. So that's what we did. Good job, Stacy. What's that? All right. Oh, let's go in order here. All right, so Jim sent me this raw file. Say hi, Jim. Hi. Hey. And this is his edit. So a couple things. I love a good panoramic landscape, especially for me when I'm shooting. What was your focal length here? 57 mil. So like not telephoto, kind of in the middle. When I shoot landscapes, I tend to see long. I'm better at telephoto landscapes than I am at wide angle landscapes. That's just the way my eye sees. But so much of landscapes is scapey, right? It's horizontal. And the sky only does so much. The foreground only does so much. So a lot of times I love this crop in that it's, you know, it kind of shows the lay of the land in a way that I think that original raw file, right? There's a lot of dead sky up here that's not really adding to it. You know, there's a foreground here, but like, you know, it's just the heart and soul of this photo is kind of where Jim cropped right at that center, right? So I think that first part's good. The sky feels a little thin to me. It's not quite as blue as I like. Again, season to taste, right? Like we were talking about this pre-show, and I definitely like things turned up to 11. One of my goals for the rest of the year is to actually shoot some portraits where everything isn't cranked all the way up, and do some more softer film-like feel to some of my photos, because I know that I can get a little over-cranked on the dials. I'm aware. And so, you know, I think this is a little bit more subtle than what I would do, and I appreciate that it is, but I just wanted to show what you can do. So I do like how this kind of works from left to right. In Western Hemisphere, photos work better left to right because that's how we read. In the Eastern Hemisphere, photos work better right to left because that's how people in the Eastern Hemisphere works. So, right, we're starting up high and we work our way down. One thing with this crop, I would like to see there. I don't know, I would have come down a little bit just to show off a little bit more of that foreground to give it more of that three-dimensional feel. I think you did a good job of controlling for these barn elements here. This barn, it's easy to have that go like into the shadows and blacks. And so I'm not sure how you did it and what method you took, but the fact that we have detail here I think is good. Not surprised with this as a golf course. How many hours a year do you spend on a golf course?
Many.
Mini? Where's this taken at?
This was in Colorado.
Colorado. Okay, so he says it's taken in Colorado. Very cool. Yeah, you can kind of see a mountain peeking back there. It's definitely not in Austin. It's definitely not in Pflugerville. Definitely not in Pflugerville. We have 0 mountains in Pflugerville. So let me show you what I did just as a way to kind of talk through and kind of see. So similar crop. So I did 16 by 10 for this one instead of 16 by 9. No, I did do 16 by 9. You did even more of a cinematic crop than I thought. That's cool. So I did 16 by 9, but just to keep some of that foreground element in, but just get rid of the loose parts of the sky that I don't really think are adding anything. It's just blue. So I did a lot of masking on this. So I have 5 different masks. So let's just kind of show you what those are. So one, select sky, darken the sky, killed the temperature to make it more blue. Okay, so I made the sky bluer, and then now in the new Lightroom update, you can duplicate inverse in one button click, which I like. And so for the opposite, for the foreground, I warmed it up, and then I killed the highlights, killed the blacks, boosted the shadows just a touch, but then I also warmed it up. So now we have a contrast between the ground and the sky. Right, the sky stays blue, the ground, the yellows are a little bit warmer to give some more tone there, but that gives us a contrast of warm and cool. So then the third thing I just did a little bit of like, this is kind of the area of interest for me. And so I just did a little bit of brightening, a little bit of highlights kind of through that diagonal center as a radial, just to bring your eye to that center, because I think that's kind of where your camera was focused. So I want to make that the brightest part so that we ensure that your eye goes there first, right? Your eye wants to go to the brightest part. And then I darkened up. I did a linear gradient and then darkened up this left foreground to even accentuate how much more we added to that center part, right? So now, because this is darker, your eye is really reading up. And so then it comes up and then it goes left to right. And so by brightness and luminosity, we're telling the viewer where to look, right? And then I took the brush tool out and I just kind of boosted some exposure. I did this fast, but just, a third of a stop on the parts of the image that I wanted to boost, right? That building, that building, that building, that building, this bush, that bush. And then I did that again and then raised up the shadows on the buildings just to bring up those details, because it had some really cool texture to them, and I wanted to make sure that came through in a print. And so we boosted that as well. So just using a little bit of a brush tool. The other thing I did, I'm not doing 100% density on those brushes. I'm only doing 50%. So it's very easy to feather that in where you're not getting halos around the buildings. You don't have to be as precise when you're not using full density. So a lot of times if I'm just trying to be subtle about it, I'll take my density down as a way to just kind of soften that amount coming in. But yeah, lots of layer masking, but just as a way to show what can be done very quickly in Lightroom with a landscape photo. I boosted texture for this tree, but I minus clarity. I feel clarity gets overdone, so it's actually a negative there for me. Dehaze 15, especially in this back mountain. There was definitely some haze, so just to kind of pop that in. And then vibrance. I use vibrance, not saturation. Vibrance plus 20 as a way to fill up the color channels. Saturation can overflow them, whereas vibrance, you can only fill up vibrance to the lid of your cup in your color channels. Saturation, you can keep pouring until it goes over, and you'll get bleed in your color channels. So yeah, but anyway, I really like this. I think this is a really nice pastoral scene. I think it's good weighting between the negative space of the left and then the buildings on the right, and it all kind of has that little swoopy curve of the tree line. So very cool. Okay. What's that?
The most important part, I part.
You part it? He says the most important part, he got a par on it. So this image comes from Kiera, who's just back from Burning Man. What's up, Kiera? How you doing? And she was saying that this was afternoon sun, right? 2 p.m. They had a little courthouse wedding, and the light wasn't great, trying to show the building behind. She said, man, the email she sent me, right? It was like, I tried 2 different angles. I couldn't find the one I wanted. I was just trying to work with it. And so I think there's good and bad going on here. The good was for 2 o'clock in the afternoon to get that sky down even a little bit, great, right? Otherwise, it would just be a white sky, very boring. So good job to have that light on them. And that's a good balance of the ambient and the sky. I do notice that this was shot at 35 millimeter. And I would say for something like this, if you notice we have a hand cut off right here. Also, she's pretty hot coming through that white. So I think for a building like this, to similar composition, but I would have backed up and shot with a little bit longer lens, right? So if we're shooting at more like 50 or 85, we can back up some, and then that building isn't so wide. It makes the building smaller because we're backing up, right? And so then we don't have things like delivery truck and trash cans and losing hands, right? It's a little bit easier to shoot longer than it is to shoot wider. And so if you're struggling with lighting, back up a little bit, and it'll make it a little bit easier to kind of foreshorten the photo in a way that kind of makes them stand out against it without having to get, that slightly wide angle distortion. So that's probably the first thing I would do. This right hand side of the photo, I don't know that it adds much, this green, this tree, right? I'd probably come down more there, right? I think that's a more powerful image without that greenery taking your eye out of the frame. But I would love to be just a touch lower, so that we or pose slightly different where that hand is coming across. So when they're joining hands in front, that's going to make it a little bit easier to keep the hands up, because when they drop them, then your composition has to change to accommodate a taller subject. So I think the lighting's really good. Like I said, it's a good balancing act. But I think a longer lens would have made your life a little bit easier. So cute moment, tough conditions. Austin at 2:00 in the summer is, you got like 10 minutes before everybody melts. And then no matter what you do, they look awful because everybody's melting on screen. And so it's very much a pressure cooker, quite literally. So good job getting what you got. Just some things to think about. Maybe shoot with a little bit longer lens. So the other thing with longer lens, you can kind of get the light a little bit closer sometimes, because you can duck under and shoot longer, and then you can get the light closer and softer. So just something to think about. Cool. All right, this was shot from Miss Christina. Used to be in Photo Club here in Pflugerville. She's hanging out in Maryland now for the last couple of years. Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, we had some. So this is her raw file. She didn't send me an edited JPEG. She just said, "Show me what you would do with this." Let's see what Josh did, because Josh goes crazy sometimes. So let's just kind of talk through what we see, right? So there's, I guess, maybe a power line or something in the upper left. So that immediately tells me, hey, there's going to be a crop or a clone stamp. Probably a crop, right? I think the house is too dark. I think the sky is too bright. Right, so just as we're kind of walking through, right, what would I change? There's a little bit of stuff on the side there, like, I don't really love it. And then the house isn't quite level, especially this house on the right. It's starting to spin off. So it's shot with a 20 mil, so you're gonna, on the edges, you start to get more and more distortion. And so for me, I'd want to fix that up as well. So the grass also a little dark, but I really love the reflection of the pond, and I really love the color in the sky. So we want to amplify that. Let's crank that to about 30, and then let's bring up the house. So this was shot at 6,000 white balance, and let's just see what a little bit of white balance and some layer masking can do. Hey, not too bad. So let's talk about what happened. So, pretty good. So right about a year ago now, Lightroom added this select sky feature. And so what I did, I had it select sky, and then I added a brush. Let me expand that so you can see. So this layer mask actually has two kind of things going on to it. So it selected the sky first, but it didn't select the water. But the water is just a reflection of the sky. So it'd look weird if the sky was darker than the pond, right? Because the pond's a reflection, it should be darker. And so what we did, we said, hey, select the sky, and then we added this brush, and then darkened the brush. And so what that allowed us to do then, right, this whole area, and also the sky, it didn't do a great job of selecting this horizon line, and so I brushed in a little bit more of that horizon line because it had that halo effect going on as well. And so that had a lot of changes. I cooled the temperature down. I knocked down the exposure, knocked down the highlights. So that brings the volume of the sky down. And what that allowed me then to do, I raised up my shadows a whole bunch, killed the highlights a whole bunch, but I cranked my whites up very high. Because this house is white, it's going to be the first thing in the white register. So I wanted to bring that up and keep my highlights down, which is more of the tonality range of the sky and the water. So it was really just brushing in darkness to the pond and then using that select sky to get that clouds darker. The other thing I did, I took white balance from 6,000 to 8,000, and that warmed up the grass a whole lot, and it warmed up this building. It warmed up this as well, but that's why in the sky selection, I cooled down the sky, because if I warm up the sky, I lose that blue. And the cool part about this is the blue-orange contrast in the sky. That's what makes it appealing. So I didn't want to lose that. In fact, I might go a little bit more even here and kill that temperature even a little bit more and just kind of play with it, right, so that we still have that blue-orange tonality. Maybe the highlights even more. There we go. But the whites here is doing a whole lot, right? As I darken the whites, you'll see kind of the photo lose that luster. But I have them cranked up because I want it to feel bright. But I'm not overexposed, but I want it to feel bright. A lot of times when you kill highlights and kill whites, the photo feels dull because there's no contrast. And so by killing my highlights, that takes off that middle, that upper middle. But then my upper, I want to be bright. Okay? So if I was doing that with a tone curve, it would look something like kill this part and then raise that part. Right, and it looks weird because I'm double stacking that effect. But it would look more like this, right, where I'm killing the highlights and then raising those whites. So that's what it would look like as a tone curve. And then vibrance, not too much, maybe 15. 15 vibrance is kind of my standard. The other thing, I don't have this camera calibrated, and so I just went with camera natural. So camera profiling, you've probably heard me talk about ad nauseum, but it's such a big part. If I change the profile here to Adobe standard, I'm going to get very different feel to it. Okay. So we go to browse, camera matching, camera natural. And that's going to more mimic, I think there was a shot on an Olympus camera, and that's going to more closely mimic what the Olympus you might have seen on the back of your screen at the time that you shot it. So that's what I'm trying to get closer to what, even if I don't stay with the edit, I like starting from a neutral base point, and then I can go off. But I find the Adobe camera profiles to be not good. So I'm always trying to calibrate or use what they consider camera matching. But I like the curve of this photo, right? You don't have to see the whole pond. It kind of becomes a finger pointing to the houses, right? So it's that upward there. Oh, the other thing I did, I rotated the crop, and I didn't do auto. I just changed the crop a little bit. I just rotated it 1 degree to the right, just to straighten up those buildings on the left. What's up, Colton? Hey, how you doing? Say hi to everybody.
Hello.
There's Colton. Okay, go away. That's my oldest. He wants to be a YouTube star. So anyway, good job, Chris. There's always more in your files than you think there is. All right, this one comes from Jess, who's been hanging out with me too much. Anybody know how this was done? It was done in post. I can tell you how it was done.
Getting weird with Josh.
What's that?
I said getting weird with Josh.
Getting weird with Josh. Yeah, it's always getting weird with Josh. It's a very simple slider. Anybody know how we did it? White balance. It's all white balance, right? Your camera is color and light. And so we're usually very concerned with the exposure. But this was just, I believe, it might be with the blue light wand. That might also be part of it. But I feel like if I look at the hotspot there, that looks more like a beauty dish. See the round circle for the beauty dish? And you can see it there as well. So I'm guessing beauty dish, and then instead of daylight, it was shifted to like 2000 Kelvin. That's my guess. So Jess, if you're listening, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what it is. The downside of this, I feel like this part of the hand is too bright. We kind of have texture through the hand until the lower. So I don't know. Sometimes when you apply the lens profile, it does that 100%, what's it called? Not chromatic aberration, but vignetting. And sometimes I don't want that. I like to keep that vignette. So my only real critique on this is All I did was add a little vignette to it to darken the hands and to bring back up, because this is your focus, right? That's what that's where you want your eye to be. So anything that's brighter than that, we need to dim. And so all I did was add a vignette. That's it. Right, and it just brought down that hand again, so there's detail here now, and there's detail in this hand, so that you can look at it if you want to, but your face is going more to that bridge through here and up to this eye, because that's probably where you want me, right? That's where your point of focus was, so that's where your point of focus in editing should be. Yeah, it'd be weird to make your eye go to the out of focus part.
Yeah.
So, but I like the experimental blue feel. Definitely feels different. This color blue, if it was with the light wand, I don't think it is, but for Canon cameras, like blue neon lights is a weird color range for Canons. They don't register it well. For Nikons, the red neons, they don't register it well. And I don't have enough experience to tell you for every manufacturer, but I know that like when we're shooting corporate events or weddings and they have blue uplighting, my Canon cameras go haywire with it. Like they just don't know what to do with it. So this is a fun, I don't know. It's really fun. I like the hands, right? Hands and eyes, right? And you want to make a good portrait, get hands and eyes going. So yeah, anyway, cool job, Jess. I like it. I like the experimental edit. Keep it up. Uh-oh. Who's this one, Mr. Steven? So Steven, who's sitting right next to me, just spent, 10 days in the Yukon to get this and 2 other photos. Yeah. This, if you're not paying attention, is freaking gorgeous, and I'm jealous and I'm angry at him that he even got to be in this place to shoot this photo. How do your feet feel? Better now. He said the rock scrambles and everything were just awful. So, but it's well worth it when you get a photo that looks this good. What I really think works about this photo is this contrast between the light hitting the rock face here and the light not hitting this face here. Right, and so we have depth, right? We have contrast. Not only do we have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and a sunset, but we have color tonality, right? We have light, we have dark, we have green, we have blue, we have yellow, we have orange. So we have all of those things working together. How long did you spend editing this photo? 4 hours? 8 hours?
4 to 8 hours.
48 hours?
4 to 8.
4 to 8 hours. Okay, that makes me feel better. But the other thing we have this nice diagonal, and this kind of acts again, right, as our point to this cliff face, right? So your eye reads from flowers, stream, and then that stream points to the main part of that cliff face. I bet your eye went exactly here to start, right? If the first time you saw this photo, I bet this is where your eye went, and this is a little accessory brightness pointing to that face. Hey, Stacey, I have a tab, so get what you want. I'm good. So what would I do different? Not much. There you go. I just brightened it up a little bit. So I did 2 things after he did all the work. I just boosted the whites a bunch, right? 78 on the whites here in that foreground. And then I just accentuated this kind of creek. I thought it was a little bit underexposed, just a touch. I mean, 0.2 of a stop, not much. But I also warmed it up just a little bit, right? If I cool it, you can kind of see what it does. But just that little bit of warmth through there, just to kind of, I felt like this got a lot of attention and this got a lot of attention. I felt like the creek got lost a little bit in between the foreground and background. Our middle ground was just a little bit lost. So I boosted that. I mean, 0.2 of a stop is not much, but just enough to bring it up a little bit. Other than that, even though you have a dramatic sky, it's not an all sky photo, right? It's just a little bit of sky. It's dramatic enough to be there, but not so much that it's a sunset looking for a foreground. Stop it. Is that a person? No, the trees. So yeah, F13, and you did focus stacking as well? Yeah. So probably focus stack here, here, and here. Canon R5, 15 to 35? Yeah, very good. Very good. Very good. So yeah, beautiful photo. Good job, Steven. Good job. I got nothing else to add. That was like the least mean thing I've ever said.
Yeah.
I know. This is from our buddy Brian. Shooting, he was on a crew for a while this year, and these are crew photos, and it's really cool. I like how he's doing just this grainy black and white. I think it's a really fun vibe. I'm always down with reflections. You also have 3 like heads, 1, 2, 3. There's a little bit there, but I won't count it. But there's just kind of like this foreground, middle ground, background of trees, of heads there. So I really like that. Again, a slight change. I really like this. I like the kind of goofy expression we got going on here. Not goofy in a bad way, just like, hey, it's fun. The only thing I did to it, I just changed the crop slightly. So I just rotated it a little bit and cropped in just a little bit. That middle line, I don't care that the other lines aren't vertical, but that middle line closest to the face, I want that to be vertical. But I really love the texture of the grain. This was shot at 2000 ISO. But I kind of like this texture. I think, right, even though it's high ISO, it might have been boosted in post. Got the on-set Red Bull rocking. I don't think the texture takes away. I think it actually adds to the photo. You know, I think we have this idea that photos have to be sharp and clean and perfect. I mean, sometimes. I don't think all the time or most of the time that's even the goal, right? Expression, light, right, reflection. Like, I think that's more interesting than image fidelity perfection, right? A perfectly image quality that's good that doesn't say anything isn't a good photo. So anyway, I like this one, Brian. I appreciate that you sent one of these because that's what I asked for. So yeah, I just crop in just a touch, like 5%. That's it. Everything else really like. Again, portrait, hands, eyes, reflection. You're not going to go wrong with that. It's always going to be interesting. All right, Miss Maddie, look at this. We got like some like Greek statue. It's not, but kind of what it looks like. I love the fingers, right? It very much has like a sculpture feel to it. And then the framing of the sun right behind. I've always been amazed at those people that do like the super long telephotos, and they're like, you know, an atlas holding the sun, or, you know, something where, or like the sun's going through the basketball hoop. I've always thought those were cool. I've never really gotten a good one, but I've always appreciated the ones. And this kind of has that feel, right? The sun is right behind our subject. Everything else is silhouette. We kind of have a sunset going on. And there's just a little bit of light. Look at that little bit of light just hitting the edge. Is just enough to outline against that horizon, right? Those water drops in the hands, just that little bit. And then the edge of the skin, right? Just enough. Just enough to kind of make it interesting. So guess what I would have done here, right? First thing, right? Crop in a little bit, right? This whole area here is just, you know, there's nothing there that adds to the photo. So cropped in, and then accentuated the silhouette. So I killed my blacks to 22, and then I raised my whites up again because I really wanted to make sure that these stayed. And if I killed it too much, I wanted this to stay, because that really, to me, is kind of what sets this off from being just a straight silhouette. There's just that little bit of texture that I like. Did I do select sky? Yes, I did. Select sky, basically -1 on exposure, and I just warmed it up a little bit. And then I added a little red to it. I don't know. I'm still not thrilled with the color of the sky. I don't know. I haven't quite got it where I want it. It's kind of a weird color. I played with it a while. I could never quite get it orangey. It always came out green or yellow, and I was struggling with that. But I really love this pose. It very much feels like he's about to throw like discus at the Olympics. That's I don't know. That's just what I feel. But we also have this rock that's a triangle pointing right back to him. I mean, technically his butt, but pointing back to him, right? So your eye kind of starts up here at the sun, comes to that rock, points back to him, kind of goes in this circle. So I think that works. And then this triangular rock here pointing back up as well, right? We have all those things. So, but yeah, I really like it. I like a good silhouette. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but there's kind of a theme of like really boosting the whites and then killing the highlights. It's a way to make the photo look bright, but not overexposed. I think so many times we do like landscape, we kill the highlights, we kill the whites, we boost the shadows, we boost the blacks, and then it has that flat HDR vibe. Yeah. Ugh. And so this keeps the brights bright, but everything from bright down is controlled. So just something to think about. Ooh. Our good friend Mark is chilling out in Europe while his wife works on a movie because they're cooler people than everybody else. And I love the street scenes. Street scenes they're hard, but you have rainy cobblestone streets. You have this cute, I don't know what that thing is. It reminds me of, we were just talking about, they're in Budapest. What's that episode of the Grand Tour? It's not Grand Tour, Top Gear, where they have the Reliant Robin on the three-wheel, and they just keep flipping it over and over. So when I saw this tuk-tuk that's red, that's immediately where my head went, where he just flips it like 30 times, and they're just giggling, laughing. So I don't, but I love this pop of red against an otherwise dull cityscape, right? Just that splash of color, I really think makes this photo. And then we have some really cool, I'm guessing, color grading going on. Kind of an aqua. It's kind of a muted, but I think the colors have been shifted as a preset. I like it, but just it probably didn't look exactly like this, but I like this better, right? There was a Mark Twain quote, right? What I think he said: "Some of what I tell you is true. Some of what I'm going to tell you is better." Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be authentic. It just has to be good. I think this idea of like authenticity in photos is very overrated. Make the viewer think. Make the viewer work. Make it interesting for them. They don't care if it's authentic. Only other photographers care. Nobody else cares. So make it interesting, right? That's all I care about is make it interesting. The only thing I did to this, honestly, I did two things. Again, we've been talking about vignetting, but I applied the lens correction. And transform to auto. And so what that does, this building back here is really starting to fall to the right. Part of it's because it's an angle, but I just hit auto, and that just tries to straighten up those lines just a little bit. And so it applies geometric so that the lines are straighter. And then, I know this is going to be surprising, but I applied a vignette. And I darkened the area around this red. I felt like this upper right-hand corner was too bright. And I really wanted your eye to focus on this little tuk-tuk, because I think that's where your eye goes, right? There's a bright headlight. It's the only headlight. It's red. It's the only color, right? That's where your eye's going. So I wanted to accentuate that by darkening everything around it, right? So it's all of that area around it gets darkened, especially the highlights get pulled down. And then I just raised the exposure a little bit to keep that even. That's all I did. But I think it brings your eye. Look at the difference as we go back. See how this one really forces your eye more to that tuk-tuk? Can you see that as we flip back? Especially this lower right and upper right and the original are just a little too bright. And so your eye kind of strays up here or down here. And so by applying that vignette, too far. By applying that vignette, it brings it back to this area here, which is really the center point. Because again, that's what's in focus. Right. So as a photographer, if you tell me my focus point is what I'm paying attention to, then that's where your brightness should go as well, because they go hand in hand. What's sharp and what's bright gets attention. What's out of focus and dull gets no attention. So we can use editing to really accentuate those facts. This is from Gene, little rock and roll, slow shutter speed. A lot of fun, right? Very good. I'm surprised she made this move standing up afterwards. I would have fallen over pretty hard after that. I think a good skill is always STS, right? Shoot through stuff. You can make your own S's, shoot through stuff, shoot through whatever. But we have a little bit of a foreground here, right? So normally this would just be a middle ground and maybe a background. So fun to have this, right? Good action. The hard part about concert photography, especially if you're not shooting a crazy high-end event, is lighting is always changing and always so tough. You get these pockets of hot spots and pockets of colors and pockets of right? We have a guy that looks like he's about to turn to the Hulk, right? We have somebody that has my skin tone, and then a drummer that's very dark. And there's just no control. As a photographer, we have no control over that. We're not the lighting directors, right? We're not the people setting this up. And so concert photography is hard. It's hard to get clean images because we don't get that control that I would want. When I walk onto a set, I'm a very easygoing person except with my lighting, and then I'm very precise. And so that's always the hard part. I'm not sure what the shutter speed on this was. Doesn't say. But I like that there's kind of some motion. Her legs are somewhat frozen. Everybody else is somewhat frozen. but there's just enough motion to give it that little bit of action to it, right? It's like shooting F1 cars. You don't want to shoot at a fast shutter speed because then it just looks like they're posing on stage. So, if they're rock and rolling, they're moving around, I think those slower shutter speeds really start to work. It's lower percentage hit rate, but I think it makes for more interesting photos. It really lends you to that feeling of, am I there? Am I feeling like I'm there? So, the lighting on this is just hard to work with, right? You have an uplight on this guy's face. You can see the shadow up here in the upper left. And that's just hard to deal with, right? It's tough, especially if you're on a slant when you have to make those photos. That's very tough. I feel like, the highlights were tried to be brought back, but like her hands are pretty far gone. Again, not much you can do about that. So yeah, I think the idea was right. The timing was right. Maybe just expose just for the highlights next time and see what that looks like. I think that could be a very interesting photo as well. And just let everything else go dark except for just the outline of whatever the hottest thing is. And then let everything just fall to wherever it falls. Because that could be a very different read on this photo, right? So what I mean by that is just, take this all the way down, somewhere in there. Maybe 3 stops down, right? And that has a very different look to it. So, I don't know, something to play with. But that's kind of the way I would go with that. But I like that there's a foreground, kind of our triangles, and then our actions in the center with that movement. So I think your ideas are right. Let's just we'll just work on kind of refining that. So cool. This is from she's a teacher, Laura. We actually had 2 photos very like this, so I chose another one from somebody else because I wanted to use this one. It's hard when you're traveling to take good photos because often when you're on like vacation or you're doing something, we're out during the day, and that's never when good photos are, right? You go out to have a good dinner somewhere in a city you've never been to. It's really hard to wake up for sunrise photos, right? And then at sunset, you're waiting in line to get your table. So, it's hard on trips that aren't photo specific to take good photos. I've written about it just recently because I just did a family trip and I only had I only took 30 photos that I kind of liked. I had 30 minutes one day and I just made what I could that day. It helps to have an understanding partner or to travel solo. No, but I like this, right? Because I don't know. It's just we have diagonals. We have symmetry. I think the crop is very strong here. Again, normally we would see more of a 3x2 crop. This is kind of like a natural, and that doesn't really work as much. So I think going to that square crop right off the bat is a good choice. A squared circle, quite literally, right? So that's good. I haven't edited this photo yet, so let's just see what happens. I would bring down my highlights. I'm going to add some dehaze because it looks like kind of a cloudy, foggy morning. I'm going to kill my blacks to make that thing look more silhouette-y. There we go. Maybe too much. There we go. I'm going to warm up this for the bottom. And then I'm going to use a linear gradient. Sky, temperature, blew it up. Boom. Quick edit. How long did that take? 30 seconds? Mm-hmm. There's your difference. Okay, before and after. So the problem with cameras is they want to be in the middle. So when you have a dark iron object and a bright background, it doesn't know, so it just guesses, and it generally guesses for the middle. And so a camera is generally not going to underexpose something dark in the foreground. And so what it does is it overexposes that, and it looks too gray, right? So this looks very gray and kind of washed out. So by adding that dehaze, it adds that localized contrast. And then by taking the blacks down, it takes these kind of almost shadows and brings them into the black register. Makes the photo look more contrasty, less flat. Hey, wife. I don't know. I just think it makes it a little more punchy. So that was just a very quick. So something right there. I don't know. A little dehaze, little blacks. Take the highlights down. Quick, easy. But I really like the composition here. I think it's fun and not necessarily what you would expect. So yeah. Y'all gonna walk out with them for a second? That's fine. That's fine. All right. Oh, what's your name?
Paul.
Paul. I've never met Paul. I met him about 20 minutes ago. All right. So is this you? I'm guessing this is you sitting on the rock.
That is me.
Self-portrait. What'd you light it with?
I
lit it with my headlamp while I was camping.
Lit it with a headlamp. Okay.
And I had to put it about 200 yards behind me because it's a really long exposure to get the stars.
Yep. It's 15 seconds. So ISO 3200 f4, 15 seconds. You know, somewhere right in there. And where'd you focus, on you or on the stars?
On the stars.
Yeah.
Because I had to set it up, and it was in the middle of winter.
Mm-hmm. Where's this at?
It was at Garner State Park.
Garner State Park. Very cool.
So
I like Garner. I just got this image about 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago, so I haven't had a whole lot of time.
technically, it might not be a great picture, but it's my favorite one that I've taken. So
very good. So
That matters.
the first thing I would do, right? We want our eyes going to the stars. So the first thing is that bottom there is bright because it's taking all the light from that headlamp. And so if we just darken up just that little bottom part, right now, your eyes are coming up here more instead of that original where that floor is so white. Your eye goes there instead of up to the stars. What was the shot on?
it was a Canon T3.
Okay.
So I wasn't intending to take a picture.
Yeah.
I just saw the stars and had to try it.
There you go. That's how we all start, and then 7 years later, it's all we take pictures of.
Downhill from there.
It's just the never ending. I think you're doing a lot right here, right? We have a foreground, right? Subject, good. The subject is actually pretty well lit for night. It's hard to do, especially color temperature, right? So the night sky is roughly tungsten. It's not exactly tungsten, 3,500 Kelvin. Most headlamps are something like 5,200. And so a lot of times what I see when people use headlamps or other things to light is that light comes out very blue. And so they either correct for that and the sky looks warm, or they look very orange and the sky looks right. So it's a balancing act. So I think the color of the light is right. I think having the light up higher, it looks like the light's kind of uplighting you, so you get a little bit of that like vaudeville lighting. So having a lot of times, crazily, in the past, when we do astro, we'll take like a painter pole, like a 20-foot painter pole, and then take that light way up high so that it kind of comes down, because it's so easy to have that light come from flat to up, and then people don't look their best. I think having the stars behind you, normally I wouldn't take a portrait like this without the stars, but having that star field, I think that's fun, right? Just that little bit here. I'd have maybe brought the camera a little bit closer so that we can see you a little bit better than that. And you're wearing black, so that's really tough as well. I think on this camera, the stars may be wandering just a little bit. It's always kind of finding the right shutter speed for your camera, for your lens. It's definitely a balancing act, and finding those sweet spots. It's tough. It took me, 10 or 12 trips doing it before I really felt like I dialed in where I wanted, what was acceptably sharp, what was acceptably blurry, what I want to get away with in exposure. I think is this your first time ever shooting stars?
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, first time.
But the funny thing was with that, it took about 40 attempts because I couldn't understand why it was blurry. It was I think it was December. It was cold.
Yep.
And I had to run. I had a 10-second timer. I had to run, jump up the rocks, and sit there, and it was actually catching the steam on my breath. So when I figured out what was going on, I had to hold my breath and do it all.
So for those of you, he had to run back and forth to the camera, so it was cold. So the steam from his breath was fogging up his own face. So yeah, it's tough. Astrophotography to me is way easier with two people than one. Like, you would think that it'd be 200% easier, but it's really like 400% easier. Having somebody at the camera or working the lights while you sit there and pose makes it a ton easier than trying to do it all yourself. It's so hard to do it all yourself. But I think it's right. I think the color in the sky is right. The stars are pretty good. It feels maybe over processed just a little bit, a little crunchy there. But first time, that's great. That's great. Next time, bring a partner, then they can work the camera. You don't have to run back and forth so much. Yeah, right? Or bring a strobe. So you're lighting this with constant light, so you have to be still because the constant light is constantly lighting you, and so it's constantly lighting any motion. Whereas if you have a strobe that fires at the end, it just freezes you at the end. You don't have to hold still. Oh yeah, and gel that speed light tungsten so that it matches the night sky, and you're ready to go. Awesome. That's it. Boom. Shift F, get out of full screen. Thank y'all so much for hanging out. Yay! Another round of Josh Says Mean Things. So much fun. Let's see. There we go. Anyway, thank y'all so much for hanging out. We appreciate it. Episode 30. God, we've been doing this over 2 years now. Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. So thanks for all the watching. Thanks for everybody that are going to catch it later. If you have any questions, just send me a message. Y'all know how to get a hold of me. All right, y'all. Have a good night. That was fun. You learn anything?